Are you living a life that truly reflects who you are, your true inner values, your core beliefs? That's what we're going to dive into in this episode. How to get your personal values, your true core beliefs in alignment with your daily activities, your daily behaviors, and whatever path you happen to be on in life. So, Chris, good morning. Welcome in. You ready to get into this?
Good morning. Yes, we are. Let's do it.
All right. So, talking about core values, talking about getting your life reimagined to those core values so that you have a smoother journey. Things that seem to be running smoother. You feel like you're now actually walking the right path versus, let's not call it the wrong path, but a path that's just not in alignment with who you truly are inside from a core value standpoint, from a beliefs standpoint, and those things that truly make up who you are internally as an individual. And that's the biggest and most important piece of it for me, Chris. When I think about that, is each one of us is walking our own path because each one of us is our own individual. So I can't say what my beliefs and my core values are and these things. I can't impose that upon you because you're not me, and vice versa, and so on for everyone else out there. And sometimes I think that's where the challenge comes in, is because we can have some of these things be generational, right? Where we feel like it's kind of almost like it's been dictated. You must do this, you must feel this way, you must do that. And that can create a lot of disconnect, discomfort, and sometimes take you down a path you really don't want to go down in the first place. So that being said, Chris, I have this question. Why do you feel it's important to get alignment? And that's the word I want to use, between your daily activities, the things you do, the path you're on in life, and what's internally, your internal clock, and what's driving you from that standpoint.
This is something I was going through last night, as I do with most times when we have our session schedule, and I was trying to, just kind of put together an outline of my thoughts, my beliefs, what guides me. We constantly throw that phrase out, my why, and I've been leaning into that a lot lately, um, as I struggle to deal with myself and my dreams, my disappointments, um, just my everyday walking through life. Because the reality is I'm in a situation, as are most people, where we are not in our own little cocoon. Well, some people are in their own little cocoon, but typically we're operating in a kind of a multiverse type situation where a lot of people are coming into your orbit, or as I actually said, my universe. And believe it or not, everybody that you encounter more than once, and sometimes just once, has an effect over your your mood, your motivations, your process, all of the above. And what I have found is there was a time in my life when I won't say that I didn't have core values. I just didn't identify them. Like really, put them in order of importance. This matters to me. That matters to me a little less. Things like that. Um, and now I'm at a point now where my core values really are starting to define my goals, dreams, and aspirations, and the things that I really want. I am coming to a point in time where I'm starting to become selfish for me. I'm the original give you my shirt off my back guy, um, and end up being without a shirt. And now I'm like, I still want to give certain people my shirt, but I also want to make sure that I got my own shirt to put on. Um, so it's tough because it's a kind of a push pull. So I feel like one part of me is being pulled in this direction, and that's probably more societal. What society, I said this a long time ago, and I'm going to ramble a little bit. People like seeing you where they like seeing you, and the moment when you start to redefine where it is you like seeing you, and it doesn't align with all those folks, is when the battle really starts, because you're in a fight for what you believe and what you truly want. I've always been the guy that I've been, and I think this is insecurity more than anything. I haven't stood up for what I wanted. I've in the efforts to get along. Sometimes you go along. Well, that doesn't. That's not. It's really not a recipe for happiness. It really isn't. And I'm at a point now where, and I think most people in our age group are. We have a couple of things that we want. We want to be happy and we want to be at peace. Those are the two. I heard you've been you since you said that months ago. It has like been that thing that's been like stuck in my crawl, and I haven't been able to let it go. And that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because it is now starting to drive me towards what's really important to me and what I really really want that I have not been brave enough to say.
And again, you brought up so many great things in that. One was just talking about the selfish piece versus selfless, which is to give your shirt off your back. And there's nothing wrong with being selfish. And I think that's the one thing that sometimes people maybe struggle with is feeling like, well, I can't be selfish because what you're, again, overused cliche, but you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help others, right? And they say that for a reason, and that is very true. And so the same rule in general applies kind of across the board. How, how can you help carry, how can you help support many others if you're not able to first stand strong for yourself, right? So I think it's a huge component of it that you hit on the head with that. And then the peace part, again, same thing. It might come across in some ways as being a little selfish, but life is gonna life. Life is lifing, as the term is these days. So things are gonna happen, and we were supposed to have a third member on the podcast today, and his mom just had a medical emergency. She's now in the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. And that certainly wasn't a planned or expected thing in any way. Um, totally derailed anything he might have had planned in the short term. And then who knows how it's going to play out even in the long term. But that's life is like that. What we have to do is be able to be clear or get clarity on what we do truly value, why we value those things, and let that be what's guiding us for the most part. So that when these things that do happen, because life is lifing, can't completely knock you off your stride, and have you land flat on your back. And that's not to say it might not happen from time to time, because big things in life happen. But that resiliency is driven by having a clear focus of where you're trying to get to. And that's what we really want to talk about today with this is getting in alignment, discovering what that is. So something else you mentioned in what you were just talking about is how you have had to start to refocus yourself on some of those things, and maybe things that you already knew, but now you're attaching to them in a different way, right? Just based on experience and where you are. And part of it too is driven by the clarity I think you're now gaining of what it is you actually want to have. So how much tell just a little bit about that, just from the standpoint of how clarity is starting to help you move forward and be able to truly see what's of value and what's not, and start to separate the two.
I think we, or at least I shouldn't say we. For me, I'm an energy person. I'm a good vibes person, and I start to incorporate that more into my everyday. How does certain situations when they come across my curb, how does it make me feel? What are my actual thoughts and beliefs regarding this? Is this something that I can get on board with? Is this something that my value system says I'm vehemently against? Am I lukewarm to it? Um, can is there room for discussion about a particular item or not? Is it something that I'm just not interested in? So all of that plays a part because approach you have to approach each individual thing and you have to literally define it, identify it and then define it, and then you have to decide how you want that, what role that plays a part in your everyday movements. And it's become more and more important that I push the things away from me that don't serve. We talk about that too. That don't serve me I am so much learning about things that don't serve me now, because I think that I've allowed so much stuff to just kind of come and affect me, and enter my space, and set up shop, and you know, some of it's just not good for me, and it's not good for the people that I deal with. You know, I'm in a role now, which is really part of what's going on now, is that I'm in this, you know, I've been in this teaching mentorship role, which is now a year this month. I have to give, you know, you look at milestones, and I'm like, I couldn't, I just connected the dots this morning. I'm like, I've been at this for a year now. Something that I think in my subconscious I wanted to do all along, because I think I told you at 21 I said I wanted to be a motivational speaker. Well, I'm not a motivational speaker. I motivate, you know, the people that are, you know, the young people that are in my charge. My job is to motivate them. My job is to show them options. My job is to keep them, to try to inform them enough to where they keep away from the potholes of life. Um, and it's very thought provoking if you're sitting in the, and I know you know this because we sit in the chair, and we kind of, we're directors. You know, I'm a director. I'm directing, and understanding the responsibility of that, the responsibility that I have to those young people, but the responsibility I have to myself if I'm going to give this advice, that I actually take this advice. That is really one of those tricky, slippery slopes that can get you, because a lot of people are great at giving you advice, but are horrible at taking it. So I'm one of those, and it's part of being, it's part of being authentic.
Mhm.
Those kids, you think those kids are going to listen to me if they don't think I'm authentic, or if they don't think that I'm actually living the path that I'm trying to tell them that they potentially should get on? You better think twice. So it has made me more measured. It has made me more acute to my responsibility to them as well as myself. And I'll be honest with you, and you know this, Brian, because you know, we may not intersect every day, but I think more or less we're in each other's consciousness on a lot of areas, because we have so many similar areas of interest, so many aligned core values. And I've got to be honest with you, when I think about it, it is there is a little comfort knowing that there's somebody else that I'm aligned with, or that I'm associated with, that I can say is one of my dearest and longest friends that I'm in my life, knowing that I have this person to fall back on. You know, if you've noticed lately, I use you selectively.
Yeah.
I don't call on you for everything. Some of this stuff I have to work out. I have to start to work out on my own. And I said this a few sessions back, that I'm trying to limit some of the voices, or at least limit when they come in, when I allow them in. So when I need you, I'm gonna call you in. But first and foremost is, I have to really keep developing my decision making process, my process for how I move every day, for how I interact with folks that may not have, I'm not saying that they're against me, but they may not have all my best interests at heart. Because
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, we all have things that are important to us. Now, I'm not talking about you on any level of this conversation. I'm talking about the others.
You know, you hit on something there too that I want to get into, because again, a lot of what the whole ascent process is about is awareness.
Right.
And because that's first things first, right? Being aware of it. So when we talk about your core values, your core beliefs, understanding who you are internally, and how you want that to fit into the world is kind of that step one of one kind of thing. What's important too, and you really hit it when you talk about the people around you. And you hear this term out there right now, find your tribe. You can find your tribe, the people that you fit in. That's kind of your tribe that you can run with. And I think what happens for some people, again, this is my observation, is they end up running with the wrong tribe because they haven't figured out what they truly value, how they want that to show up in the world. So they're running with a tribe that has a different set of values, that's not in alignment with who they truly are, and they can't figure out why things just don't feel right, why there's just disconnect. They're part of but not part of kind of thing, because it's just this natural thing that we have as humans, because our intuitions can be strong, but we can choose not to listen to our intuitions too. And I think that's a very important piece of getting clarity on what it is about you that's important, so that you can use that to help choose who is or who is not part of your tribe, if that makes sense. And that goes back to what we said when we kind of first started this about peace. Being with the right tribe can also start to help bring you some peace. It can also give you relationships like what we have, where you've got that person that when the rain is pouring and the lightning is hitting and it's one of those days, you can say, hey, bro, I just need a minute. And you can lean on that person. But if they're not in alignment with you, whoever you're trying to lean on is going to be like, yeah, we are not vibing like that. So that's an important piece, I think, of all of it too, is to realize who you have around you. Why do you have these people around you? And then is there some commonality and some alignment between that group, your tribe, and you that's actually working for you, or is it working against you? Sorry, we'll get it right back to the video in just a second. Just wanted to ask a quick question. What's stopping you from living, loving, and leading your best possible life? Do you feel disconnected, out of sync, unsure of really what it is you want to accomplish, what your true purpose is, and where you want to go with your future? Well, the ASCENT Coaching Program is here to help. We help you get in sync with your true beliefs, your true understanding, your true values. And from that, we help you transform from the inside out and move yourself towards the life you really want. If that sounds of interest to you, please click the link below. You can schedule a free, no obligation consultation where we'll simply get clear on the things you want to accomplish in life, maybe get a better understanding of why certain things haven't worked the way you feel that they should. And from there, we can move forward to help you become the best possible you can be. Let's get back to the video. The other thing too that's interesting that you kind of hit on there is, and that I want to bring into it, is, and we talked about this kind of in the green room before we started, and that's about acceptance, and being, and it's not about being accepting, because that's not what we're talking about. There are different things that formulate our beliefs and our values, especially as we grow up, that we experience that are essentially out of our control. Your childhood is an experience you go through where you are the subordinate, the parent is the superior, and that is the way it is. And maybe certain things happen that kind of shape who you are, what your beliefs are, what your values are as you go through that. But then you get to an age where you start to be able to think for yourself, and you reflect back on those things, and it might not actually be in alignment with who you are in that point and at that age and at that stage in life. But we can choose to do one of two things: and accept what was taught to us or pushed down upon us, or reject what was pushed down upon us, and truly start to try to live based on what we believe internally. And I think that's a key concept too, is to identify maybe some of those things for yourself and say, you know what, am I being just accepting of that and I'm still letting that drive me? Or am I going to reject that and start to try to go in my own direction? We talked a little bit about that. Whatever you're willing to share about that acceptance piece, that you think will help our audience. How about you put that out there?
Again, say that. I'm sorry. I was going through a range of thoughts in my head,
Yeah.
and I
No,
was
you see,
totally somewhere else.
whatever you are willing to share about that acceptance piece and what that's been like for you of accepting whatever those past traumas or beliefs that were pushed down upon you. Uh, what have you learned from it, and what can you share with our audience about that journey?
Okay, for our audience who don't know, I'm still dealing with a major death from in December. My auntie, who was a famous writer, I won't put her name out today. If you know, you know. If you don't, educate yourself. Um, but what has bubbled up to the surface for me over this last, it actually started bubbling up before the death. The death just kind of it really put a spotlight on it,
Mhm.
and really brought to the surface some of the trauma that I had starting out at a very young age. Now, I'm going to say one thing just to kind of throw it out there as a barometer is I have always dealt with body issues. I'm not the biggest kid, but I'm a big kid by my definition. A little bit on the overweight. I have been a little bit on the overweight side. So it's one of those things that this all ties in at some point. It affects my self-esteem. It affects my confidence. I can be an extremely confident individual. I'm very capable of that. These are things I already know about me. I'm a capable individual. I have a lot of, I'm intelligent. I can go in many rooms and hold my own. But there's always been something that's been gnawing on me, and it's part of the societal view of people, and I can only talk about men because I'm a man. I'm not anything else other than a man. But I've struggled with that. It's common knowledge for you as a friend know this. I gained 35 pounds when I had a tumor on my cornea a couple years ago. Well, I think I announced this a little while back, a couple weeks ago, that I had finally got down to 200 pounds. And it was, I think subconsciously, I didn't believe it,
Hmm.
but I've started to allow myself to believe it. But then what happened? What ends up what it ended up happening here recently was people have been complimenting me on how I look, and I'm like, huh? Like, did you lose a bunch of weight? And I'm like, what do you mean? You look totally different than you did 6 months ago. And I'm like, you noticed? I've had 4 or 5 people approach me and say that to me, and it has been such a motivating. The comments have just been so inspiring to me to really kind of step it up a little bit more. Now I've reset the goal. I'm trying to get another 10 pounds off. But it's what it really says is how I look at myself. So I can only imagine if this is something that's an everyday part of my movements, my good, the bad, the ugly, how many other people are out there. Now, it's not, I've talked about this a lot over the years, but for some reason, this feels different today. This feels like it's something that can propel me to that next level, that next iteration of Chris. Um, and I'm getting a taste of what I want. Am I brave enough to stay with it? Absolutely, I am. And
Hmm.
I have committed myself, have started to recommit myself to all of this. I think I have now into thinking over this last 6, 7 months or whatever that I can be so much more. That doesn't mean that I got to work harder. It just means that my belief system is growing. And I'm now starting to believe that I have the ability to make much larger impact on the rooms that I go in and out of. The people that are counting on me, namely my students, my 18, 19, 17, 18, 19, and 20 something year old students. I am now starting to get in and be more of a quarterback, be more of a director, be more of a catalyst to their
Yep.
growth.
It's interesting because that's a piece of the core value, the belief in yourself that's there. And as you said, sometimes as you run through life, you know it's there. You know it's a struggle, it's a challenge based on the perceptions that have been there over time. Um, so again, step one is the awareness piece. But at some point, something can happen in your life that just takes you around a corner that you didn't know was going to happen, gives you a whole different perspective. And I think that's the important piece that I want to just share with the audience is to say, just because it's there and it maybe carries a certain type of weight or a certain type of negativity or with you, whatever it might be, understand that there is always an opportunity for it to change and to shift. But if you lock it in a closet and say, I don't want to deal with it, then it's always going to be there, because the only way to get past it is through it, if that makes sense. And Chris, I think you can probably definitely relate to that part of having to work your way through it, whether it takes 1 year or 40 years, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because it's common knowledge. We're not getting any younger. I'm not getting any younger. But my reality is the only thing I'm asking for is time. Um, and I think the thing that we, especially in our age group, we come up against is, for me, there's two or three things, and I won't get into the specifics of them, but there are two or three things that I've been in denial, and I've mentioned this before. I've been in denial about for years, and they're centered around my wants and my desires and my dreams. I've pushed it down. I've ignored it. I have done everything in my power because I knew that the journey would have there would be pain associated with that journey. The old adage, pain is mandatory, suffering is optional, but it is a fine line between the two, and figuring out what works, what doesn't work, how much you're going to give of yourself to get to that place you aspire to be. And I keep coming back to, I want it. It's crazy, and like I said, I'm sure at some point down the road I'll share what those things are. Right now, I'm going to keep them private to me because I need to keep working on them, and what I don't want to do is find some way to shame myself out of staying on the path, because that's what ends up happening. And I think, if I had a crystal ball with a lot of folks, because we all have challenges. Every man, woman, and child has challenges. Sometimes we ignore those challenges. Sometimes we do everything in our power to say that they do not exist. Life is just rosy and it's all good. Well, that's subjective.
Hmm.
But what I have keep coming back to is these two or three things that I really, really want, that I've been in denial for probably 10, 15 years. I still want them. And I got to keep exploring until it is exhausted. And that's where I'm at today.
Yeah.
But I
No, that's
also still have to give to the people that are I still have to give and feed the people that feed and care for me.
that's the being present piece of it, right? There's things that we know we need to do because it's present, meaning today. But there's also things that we can continue to work on that are technically unknown, because unless you have a crystal ball, you haven't shared with me all these years. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring us, but that doesn't mean we can't work to make tomorrow different, better, different direction, whatever it might be, and work on that today, and see where that takes us, because I think that's an important part. The other thing too, and similar to you, talking about, I want to go back a little bit of a story for me, talking about just self belief, and a lot of it in some of my earlier years was tied to the type of work I was doing, and or the support that I received from not just coworkers but leadership within organizations. And I don't want to make this a management or leadership style type conversation. That's a podcast for another day. But there are, kind of a couple different silos of how certain people manage. And a lot of people will manage their people based on fear, dominance, and that side of it, versus nurturing, being supportive, guiding, etc. And for whatever reasons, in a lot of my early years of working, most of my management that I worked for was that fear based, dominant based, blah, blah, blah. So they wanted you to do the work, but they wanted to fear you into it, and these different things. There wasn't a lot of support. And that impacted me, from a self belief and can I do it, and blah, blah, blah. And am I worthy? Am I capable? Yada, yada, yada. You get all of that into your psyche. And 25 years, 30 years ago or so, got in a whole different situation. And all of the leadership was essentially just that we're talking about now. Hey, do you know you're really good at this? They're praising you for what you do well. Um, we really think that you could maybe even do this job for the company because you have this skill set and this skill set and things that I didn't even have anywhere in my view or in my thought. So it really does matter um, who you associate with, especially if they are in any type of role within your life that's guiding or directing or managing your life. So, but again, who those people should be, how can you know who they should be until you kind of get a better grasp on your core values and what's important to? Because again, that's also people are I guess essentially part of your tribe, and that really made a difference for me, my confidence, my thought of, as you said when you were speaking a minute ago, Chris, I can walk in any room and hold my own. I think that's an important thing for people to realize and understand.
Yeah, it's amazing because these are messaging. This is messaging I have for my young students because a lot of them have virtually zero life experience. Everything is huge in their eyes. I mean, everything. I just had to re-engage one of my first cohorts, one of my first students in my first cohort, young lady. She's I'm gonna say she's probably 19. On the surface, she's tough as nails. We get to know her. She's just a great kid who has the environment that she comes out of. They learn how to put walls up early because that's the defense mechanism. That's how they don't get hurt. Well, also putting up those defense walls actually separates you and segregates you from the things that you may or may not want in your life, that you may want in your life. And having those conversations, and because of the fact that the inexperience level just screams, they don't know about options. I think if you saw the KITV special that they did on Puea a couple of weeks ago, I think I sent that to you. If I didn't, I'll send it to you. And one of the things that they were talking to me about was, my role as a teaching assistant. And I said, well, one of my whys is about teaching these kids options, the options that are in front of them, the options that they have, how to recognize them, and how to, more importantly, reach out and grab them with no fear, or at least limited amounts of fear, but grabbing them, understanding you have support on the backside. Because, like I said, some of these, like, I hadn't talked to this girl and we probably hadn't talked for a couple months, and some job opportunities have popped up from some of our other hiring partners. And I was like, hey, are you working? She's like, no. But what I come to find out from listening through the grapevine is she's holding on to not having to. She is dug in. She has been dug in over the last few months because she knew adulthood was coming, and she was just going to fight it as long as she could fight it. And now she's realizing she can't fight it any longer. And that's what I had. That the message there. As a matter of fact, we were texting, and I was like, "Can you call me?" These kids love texting because it's you can be detached while being attached, which I absolutely drives me nuts. And then she said, "Call like as this is the exact message she gave me. Call as in talk." It's like absolutely call as in talk. And then the next one was now. I'm like, now would work. I
Good.
can work with now. Okay. So we got on the phone. I didn't do a follow up with her yesterday. I'm going to do it on Monday. I wanted to let her breathe a little bit, but opportunity is knocking, and I need her to understand that it's knocking, and it's time for you to answer. And it's the same thing in my life. All this stuff, it's chronicled. I've been going through with on the job. I got my own personal life stuff. That's all in itself. And then I had a little upheaval at work, which of course affects you because we work together. We work together. A lot of people that don't know that. You and I work in different capacities and on different initiatives. So we're kind of we're kind of joined at the hip on certain weeks. We're joined at the hip more than others, and
Correct.
it is what it is. But just understanding how that entity moves, that being, that organism, how it moves. And I'd be less than honest if I didn't say that our last conversation was a bit challenging for me. The request you made from me, I didn't understand it to begin with, why you were asking for, which of course I was brave enough and intelligent enough to ask you why.
Mhm.
My first thought was I'll offend this man. The second was if I'm going to help actually meet his request, then I kind of need to know a little bit more as to why he is pushing this thing, or not pushing it, why you're making this request. And that's where the thought process kicked in. And I had to process. I went away from our conversation understanding what you wanted. Now I had to process it to the point where I needed to go and find the folks that I need to fulfill it. So there was a couple of chapters to this request. Ultimately, I'm coming out on the other side with a much better understanding, but I'm also coming out of it with more ammunition for me,
Mhm.
so that you and I both benefit. Because at the end of the day, you and I are looking for benefits from each other, right? If I do X for you, you're going to do Y for me, and hopefully we're going to get to Z.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
But
looking for the win-win. I'm setting up the stage for the win-win. That's where my mind's always going to
but I
try
had
to
to
go.
understand. But I had to process that to even get to that point. Knowing everything I know about you for the 30 years we've been friends, it still represented a challenge for me to get to a level of understanding where I could really dig in to deliver what's being asked.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
If that makes
And,
sense.
oh, it makes perfect sense. And you rung a big bell in what you were just sharing across the board, and that's communication. Talking with your student, she's like, talk, like call, like phone, like right. I mean, there's this big disconnect. But what I want to really focus on when we talk about communication is, again, big, broad spectrum of things when we talk about communication. From our chairs today, and with the topic, the subject we're talking about, with your values, your beliefs, getting in alignment, that most of that communication is that last piece you just were referring to, is the internal communication, right? That's the most important part of getting all of this stuff in alignment. You've got to have that self-talk, what that self-talk looks like, feels like, so that you have the right resonance with what's said, what's shared, the reasons why. Because now, once you get to that place and that you're in that right space, now you can actually then speak it out to the world, right? Show it to the world, whether it's verbally, whether it's in your actions. Sometimes it's just a mindset and attitude. It you can say nothing, and just do how you float into the room matters, right? Because that does send a message of a certain type of communication. And so that's another thing I definitely want people to be aware of, is understanding that the relevance of your own internal communication, staying connected to that, work, putting in the work to work your way through it. Just as you just talked about, you may start here like, I'm not really connecting with this, but why? And what is it I'm missing? And being brave enough and willing to ask that follow-up question, or two or three or 10, so you gather the data that you need so you can process your way through it. It makes a huge difference. So communication is not just outbound, it is also internal, and I think it's a very important part of it, and I know you can resonate with that.
Oh, absolutely. It's about dialogue. I mean, a lot of cases where, it's amazing some of the conversations that can be spawned and the information that can be shared through dialogue. And the one thing I'm really on board with is that dialogue sometimes starts out very clunky.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. It's muddled. It's hazy, and you have to be strong enough to keep proceeding forward. Now, we talk about progress. Progress isn't measured in distance, it's measured in progress. This is the same. This is what, when we're really getting to the meat and potatoes, all this is what we're talking about. Having that wherewithal to understand that it may start out a little bit less than desirable, but if you maintain the right attitude and the right focus and with the desired outcome, you probably got a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're dealing with somebody that's on your level or wants similar things, it will get easier as you go, and you're going to find out that that person that in yours and my point, I have to remind myself that Brian Murray is typically 100% for good. Not that I've ever had a reason to think that you were not, but because of the landscape of society and how everybody's out for their own, and you can't necessarily trust what's being said to you, because I don't, there's some people I work with, I don't know what they want. I have yet to figure out what their end game is. I believe I know what their end game is, and I'm going to hold on to that ideal of what I believe, but I don't, all the evidence is not there. So proceed cautiously, proceed positively, but keep your eye on it, because it's a fluid situation.
Absolutely right. So the last thing I want to get into when we're talking about this is the action part of it, because once you have more awareness, you've gained some clarity as to how you want this to start to look and shape itself. Uh, the onus of whatever transition, or however it starts to actually play out long term, definitely falls into your lap. And I think that's the piece. We made a comment on a previous podcast talking about training and development, these different types of things, and how we can go to all these classes and take read all these books and various things, and I wanted to, 7 habits of highly effective people. And do you know them? Yes. And they spout them off 1 through 7, bam, 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 bam. And then they follow up with the next question: are you doing them? And it's like, huh? Right. So knowing is important. It starts there, but it's the doing of whatever that's actually going to get you where you need to go. So that getting committed to the doing piece of it is where I think most people probably struggle. So, Chris, share a little bit of, in whatever capacity for you, how you've gotten to that point of going, you know what, I know I need to do X, right? Okay, great. I know I need to do X, but what pushes you forward? What are you using to motivate you to actually do X? Oh, sorry, real quick. We'll get right back to the video, but I have a request from you. If you're getting value from this video, please click the subscribe button and also click like, and maybe even share this with some of your friends. Also, join our community by making a comment, sharing your thoughts, your experiences that are helping you to live, love, and lead your best possible life. That's it. Thanks for subscribing, and let's get back to the video.
My initial response would be is the failures I've had in life, because I've had a lot of them. I've had successes. Don't get me wrong. It's like not like my life is just littered with failure. I've had a lot of successes, but I also think what the failures drive me, but the level of the successes drive me even more, because I haven't had the level of success that I believe that a person of my caliber is deserving of. And I know that's a dicey word for some people, deserving. But I think you have to grow into that. There wasn't always a time when I could say, well, because I think everybody deserves good. I think everybody deserves to win. I don't think there's anybody out here other than unless you're just pure evil. If you're pure evil, then I think you deserve to lose. I just think that, if your DNA is just demonstrated you are evil, you deserve everything that comes with evil. But for people like you and me, who I believe, like I said, I didn't say we were saints, but we are good people. I can say that is one thing I can say to you. I'm a good person. I mean, I'm not a perfect person, but I'm a good person, because I initially think when I'm dealing with people, what can I do that makes it better for them while simultaneously making it better for me?
Yep.
So that's a big motivator. It's a huge motivator for me.
Now, let me ask this as a follow on to that. Obviously, you're taking actions, you're motivated. It's the failures that you know are going to come. But, as we talk, you can't hit a home run without swinging the bat, right? So if you never swing, you might strike out, right? I mean, that is what it is. So, do you feel that change, because we talked a little bit about change, that change naturally, I mean, will happen? Or do you feel that it's something that you can actually manifest and have conviction and intent about to have the change happen? or is it just kind of like, oh, it'll happen or it won't happen? What's the better mindset? What's been your approach to that?
Honestly, I think it's a mix of both. I think certain things is just part of the evolutionary process. So we evolve. If you are a growth minded person, let's clarify that. You
Mhm.
have to be a growth minded person to begin with. Doesn't matter the level you're on. Doesn't matter how much it permeates you. It has to be a part of your DNA. Being growth minded on some cellular level. If that's the case, you have that ability to grow if you allow it. That's the other part of it. You have to allow it. Now, you and I are definitely growth minded people. I know that. I know that. I mean, I know everything, but I know that about us. We're growth minded people. We're constantly seeking. It's an everyday, almost minute by minute, hour by hour. That's why I don't sleep sometimes, because I'm in a growth minded phase and I lay down sometimes and it gets quiet, but in my head it's ringing loudly. That's what happened Thursday after having a conversation with you. I called you to apologize to you. You know, I realized that I called you to check in and let you know I was okay, because I wasn't okay the last time I saw you. I called in to check in with you, even though I didn't necessarily owe you an apology, but I felt that it was warranted that I at least give you some, hey, this is where I've been, even though I knew you knew.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
sometimes I ascribe to the theory that sometimes you need to hear it from me,
Mhm.
because then it cements it down. You 100% know, oh, okay, he just validated everything. He validated what I was thinking, because I know this, brother,
Yeah.
right? And that helps you move forward. That helps you to help me the next time you that I call on you. All this stuff is helping you to help me, while simultaneously helping myself.
Yep. That's the communication we were just talking about. So yeah,
I know
absolutely.
that was a big word salad, but it is, if you slow the tape down and listen to it, it is very true.
Yeah.
But I'm constantly in that mode now, and I think that's me, the evolved Chris. You know, that's why right now I'm dealing with, which we touched on briefly, I'm dealing with the trauma from the death.
Mhm.
It is bringing up so much. The problem that I'm having is right now is, on a normal circumstances, I would go back to these people would be alive that helped to create my trauma, and we would have, if they were alive today, I could go back and have discussion with them. If my mother were alive today, I could literally, with the way I'm equipped today, all the tools I have in my toolbox, I could go back and say, Mom, we need to have a conversation.
Mhm.
I did that at 35, so I've done it once. Today it would be a different conversation all in itself, but it will have been born out of that conversation when I was 35,
Mhm.
because it allowed that I allowed myself, or God allowed me to get to have the strength and the wherewithal to be able to enunciate my feelings, fair or not fair, to get it out, because sometimes that's what it's about. It's about
Yeah.
just purging it out. This is how I
Yeah.
really feel.
Yeah.
Even to the point of something innocuous as in, hey, can we come over your house? No, I don't want you guys to come over my house today. Well, why not? Because I'm trying to relax today. And as much as I love you to death, if I have you in my home, I'm not going to relax today.
Mhm.
That's today. That doesn't mean tomorrow, if you ask me to come over to my house, I'm not going to, oh, come on over. Today wasn't working, wasn't going to work, not going to be able to honor that request. Still
Mhm.
love you.
No, thanks for sharing that. And that is so true. How again, different ages, different stages, different communication skills. Again, both internally and externally. How you get to a different place and you can communicate it differently, and you see the value of that communication, and you're able to explain and express the whys and all that's behind it, so that they can understand and not feel that you have to approach it like you're selling them on something, that they have to, if they agree, they agree, if they disagree, they disagree, and you're like, hey, that's not on me. My responsibility here was to let you know how I saw it, how I felt about it, and there you go. Now we may end up seeing it differently. We might end up having a huge kumbaya moment after. You don't know what you don't know, but you've got to develop that strength, I think, to get comfortable with what it is you, authentically you, and be able to voice and express that. And I think that's a key piece of kind of what we've been talking about this whole time, is getting all of that in alignment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm going to do final thoughts. I'll go first, and then I'll have you close us out today. We'll talk about final thoughts.
Okay.
So the main thing that I want to, I guess, go back and talk a little bit about what our audience is this piece, and that is the self reflection, the self evaluation pieces of it, and taking that time to dig into that a little bit, because as we said, life is lifing, and uh, what the norms are, whether it's, you should go have into this work, or generationally this is family's done this, or historically it's been this way, and maybe some things like that have shaped your thought process, your being, your core values, and your beliefs. Um, those things can innately be there because of where they came from, but also understanding that as you have your life experience, what you go through, those things also feed into that. And sometimes we need to just do a check-in to say, hey, I used to be this, but now I'm more this. And then, is what I have in my life still serving this old me, or more this new me? And that's having that awareness, getting those things aligned, and that's when you talk about the mind, the heart, the spirit, the gut, and intuition. Getting all of that kind of centered, I think, is important. So putting some time into that, putting the work into that, so that you can, in whatever ways need to be done. Again, we're all on our unique paths, so I can't tell you what that is for you. But what I can say is getting that in alignment works for everyone. That is a broad stroke that I think applies to everyone. And you might get to the end of it and go, nope, I'm still good. But 10 years from now, you might need to do another evaluation, maybe a shorter period of time,
Right.
especially if a trauma has happened. Like you said, Chris, you lose a loved one, you totally change careers, whatever it might be. Um, that life, and I call those things kind of life quakes. It's like, whoa, all right, now what, kind of thing. Those are the times when you should take a moment and I think reevaluate and just see if it is or is not in alignment. And then from there, you can choose to walk whichever path suits you best. So that's just my advice. Chris, final thoughts for our audience.
Let me share one quick thing and then I'll give you my final thought.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I have also discovered, and I want to put this out there for later discussion. Um, lately, over this past 60 days, 45 days, I have discovered that I have a series of triggers. There's certain things that trigger me, and they're typically not something that someone is directly doing to me, but sometimes whatever they're. I've got a few people that are in, a couple people that are in my life that I'm trying to work through some previous relationship uh, faux pas. And these one or two people we're talking about, great people, got their own set of issues. Not unlike me, they got their own set of issues. But I have come to understand now that some of their actions trigger me. And I get really, how do I want to say this? It gets ugly for me. And I want to lash out. I want to be heard. But the way that in the past, that what that's done to me, it's really not conducive to opening up conversation, which is what I'm seeking. Have more adult conversation. The outcomes are the outcomes, but just the ability to have some conversations because these are long term people. A couple of these people are long term people. And I'm trying to go back and undo some of the wrongs. Not an easy challenge on its face, but to learn to finally come to the conclusion that I am triggered and that I can't continue to react the way I've reacted in the past because it's just not a recipe for positivity and positive outcome. It's just not. So anyway, we'll put that in the parking lot for now. But I just wanted to say that because I really wanted to put that out into our universe. That yes, I have discovered that I'm triggered, that certain things are happening in my life, and it's it's probably more than I give it credit for.
Yep.
So I'll leave that there. My final thoughts. I really want our audience to remember that this process is fluid. Your understanding of your core values evolve over time, and the way you choose to live them out may shift as well. Be patient with yourself. I'm talking to me while I'm delivering this message. Be patient with yourself. Embrace the learning and celebrate the small victories along the way. Reimagining your life is an act of courage and self love. And the reward is a life that feels genuinely and powerfully yours. So take those first steps, because that's how it starts. At least that's how it starts for me. Take those first steps, reflect on what truly matters, and begin building that future you truly desire, one value driven choice at a time.
Very well said. I could not agree with you more, Chris. Thank you for that. That is the quote unquote holy grail of it. Also, I appreciate that. Sir, this has been awesome. Thank you for your time. A lot of insight was shared, and the audience, I believe, will be able to take some of this and hopefully put together some very thought provoking things for themselves to move them forward so that they are in better alignment and are able to reimagine their best possible life. So, Chris, until next time, my friend, you take care. And as I tell everybody out there in the world, let's do a better job of taking care of each other. And we'll talk again soon. Bye now.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.